Here we go.
Nobody.
Oh, and I found out Jill got 121 votes in Guam.
Okay.
Oh.
All right.
Not nothing.
Half of a percent, about the same as she did in New Mexico proportionally.
That's great.
Well, I will be there for 2028, so hopefully we'll do a lot better then. It's my goal. One of my goals.
So for the recording of, this is the July 21st meeting of the Nassau County Green Party. We have a guest from New Mexico, Rick Lass, and a guest from Maine, Justin Beth, talking with us about how to build your local party. And I turn it over to them.
Rick, do you want to start off with some words, or do you want me to start off with some words?
I'll go ahead.
Go for it.
So I think the main topic we wanted to talk about is party building. So I'm going to share a little bit about what happened in New Mexico in the late 90s, because I think it was a great model. We flourished for several years and then fell apart, which is the sad part. But during that time, we grew to 13,000 members. We had a solid locals in 10 different counties. We were really making dents electorally. And I think the main thing is that what everyone understood at the time was that the Green Party was founded to become the electoral arm of all the different movements that supported our key values, whether justice, democracy, peace, ecology, all that was happening on the streets. And, even then it was clear the Democratic Party was not really the party for those movements, even though a lot of people thought it was and still think it was. People were out on the streets and we basically realized standing out on the street protesting is great, but if we don't have a seat at the table, we're never really going to make the fundamental changes. We might get thrown a bone here and there. So the party in New Mexico founded to become the political force that the movements were demanding. I first got involved in the mid 90s, as I said, and we called it a two-prong approach to elections. We ran in local elections to win and to implement policy, and we ran in the state and federal elections to get media attention, change the narrative, spread our party to the other geographic areas. We started in Taos, Santa Fe, and Albuquerque, basically. And we managed to be successful at both. From 1994 through 2002, we won a local election every election cycle. We got a municipal judge in, school board members in 3 different towns or whatever districts, and city councilors, I think just in Santa Fe. One down here where I live now, Silver City. So we were winning local elections, and then we were seen as leaders on really critical issues. In Santa Fe, where I lived at the time, the 2 city councilors we had elected were the people spearheading the bus system. There was no transit other than a taxi cab. And if you couldn't afford a taxi cab, you could apply for a voucher, but you had to be on Medicare or Medicaid to get a voucher. So, if you didn't have family or someone to drive you around and you didn't have a license, not to mention I don't need to go into all the issues, but anyway, the bus system was a huge one. And also we passed a living wage that was the second highest in the country, only behind San Francisco at the time, $12 an hour, which was a lot 30 years ago. Not so much anymore. But anyway, we did that. But at the same time, we ran in the big races, just knowing we almost certainly wouldn't win. We ran in 97 and 98. We had 2 congressional candidates. One got 15% of the vote and one got 17 in special elections. They did amazing work. It's hard work. They're both candidates that were already involved in movement sort of things. Carol Miller had run as a Democrat 2 years before for the state legislature and saw what a dead end that was going to be. And they both became green. Bob Anderson was a union organizer and a peace activist before coming into the Green Party. They had their sort of street creds, if you will, and they knew how to organize, and they were great spokespeople. Um, you know, when when the Democrats would talk about protecting Medicare, we would talk about Medicare for all. It wasn't really, that wasn't the slogan exactly at the time. When they talked about, raising a minimum wage, we talked about a living wage. We really were able to use those campaigns to get media attention and to talk about what people really need, not just platitudes. Um, so, we were able to do this because our party building strategy meant being involved in the movements. Like I said, both Carol and Bob and just about everyone in Green Party meetings was involved in some kind of issue-oriented struggle, whether it was protesting or going to the legislature or the city councils. We all had, we all had those relationships with people, and they knew we were serious, that we showed up. And that really helped. And I think that's a huge part of party building. And uh, I think you all are part of a lot of those movements as well, and realize how important it is not just to be giving lip service to these, but to authentically be part of them. And that's a huge thing. And that's why when Justin and I go and talk about candidate recruitment with different local parties or state parties, that's one of the things we always say is don't just look around the room to see who's going to run for governor. See who's already out there helping house the homeless, feed the hungry, stop the war, you name it. Those are the people we want to bring in, so that people that are going to be our candidates, hopefully, are people that already have those credentials and relationships. They're already comfortable talking to strangers, to government officials, to the press, probably. They're already clearly passionate, or they wouldn't be doing all this. And they have that credibility. And those are the people that I think we need to be looking for moving forward. um, so a little more on that, on the topic of party building and what we did in New Mexico, and it'll be different everywhere based on election calendars and things like that. But the key to turning a campaign, a ballot access drive, a legislative issue, whatever, into a party building exercise, in my opinion, is to make every event and action the stepping stone to the next event or action. Um, you know, I think that one one of the reasons I think Cassandra reached out to us is because of the annual national meeting workshop the Ballot Access Committee is putting on about using a ballot access drive to build a local party. And I don't really want to get into New York's ballot access laws, at least at the beginning, maybe if we have time later. It's a nightmare out there, and you all know it, I'm sure. But the point is really that if you're out there and you're asking people to sign a petition for the Green Party or for a Green Party candidate, and you get enthusiasm, not just, okay, I'll sign, but someone who really wants to know more, be ready for that next ask. Either have them sign a volunteer form if you have one with you, get their information so you can call them. We need to not have isolated events, but we need to have like a continuing, growing movement inside the party. So the more you can do things like that, and that's really the key. In New Mexico, we were really lucky. We had local elections in March, the general elections in November, the legislative session in January, the summer fiestas and community events that we have out here. So no matter what time of year people came, we could find some way to plug them in. And then the key was, hey, we just did great on this campaign, and now we're going to be lobbying for a returnable bottle bill and a this and a that. Can you help out with that? Get them while they're excited, and make sure they stay plugged in, and talk to them about how how we're not just a political force. We're part of the movement. We're the electoral arm of the movement. Talk to them about the different ways the Green Party works in your community, and just do what you can to keep them engaged. And don't forget the fun events too. It's not all just testifying. It's, hey, we're all going out for lunch after the legislative hearing. Will you join us? Get people plugged in. And I think one of the reasons I'm still here is because it was so much fun to be involved with the Green Party back then, because we worked our tails off, and then we went, and we were a lot younger, so we partied our tails off too afterwards, and we really got to be not just political allies, but good friends. And I think that's a huge part of party building is getting to know each other. And just a total editorial about the annual national meeting. Please vote to have it in person next time, because that is so critical to meet the people that you've only known on Zoom. I mean, I'm shocked that I know Justin as well as I do, because we've never actually met in person and had a cup of coffee or anything. It's, but back then you started to know about people and not just, hey, we've got this project to work on. So building that sense of camaraderie, if you will, I think is critical. So I could talk for an hour, but that would bore everybody. So I think I'll let Justin say a little bit about his experiences, and then we can hopefully have more of a discussion about, I want to hear what's going on in your part of the country too, and not just us coming to tell you what we're up to. So, thank you very much again for having us.
Yes, thank you all for having us, and thank you, Rick, sharing your thoughts on some party building. So I'll maybe discuss a little bit about Maine, but Rick, mentioned a key point. Every state is different, and your ability to run candidates, et cetera, right? Which I think running candidates is a part of party building. And, we do want to be that electoral arm for a leftist movement, right? For anti-capitalist, anti-war, anti-genocide, living, human rights respected. Everybody has the ability to maintain a decent level of living, including housing and healthcare, right? I think we are fighting for the things that people want and need, and are so fed up with the Democrats and Republicans. I mean, we have a historic opportunity here. And I think, somebody recently kind of came out to me. Are you guys familiar with Sabby Sab's podcast?
Yeah.
Revolutionary Blackout Network. Highly recommend it. Her producer, Eric, often talks about his 11 demands idea. And I'm very interested in kind of bringing this into the Green Congressional Campaign Committee, introduce this to our candidates, have them possibly sign on to the 11 demands kind of thing, which is, things like housing and healthcare, and end to wars, he also recommends just having a detailed list of demands like that. So I'm looking at it again, in terms of for the Green Congressional Campaign Committee, of these are the things we're going to run on if we go into Congress as a group, right? If you elect this small voting bloc into Congress, this is what we will fight for: ending these wars, cutting off this funding for wars, Medicare for all on the national level, absolutely, and I think having a list of demands, I think, is strong. Going back a little bit, I'll talk a little bit about Maine, but again, every state has its different challenges. And, so please feel free to correct me here. I don't want to just be me talking here, but registration in Maine, we're a registration, by party state. So when you register to vote, you register with a party. We have 40,000 Greens in Maine, which is, I think, maybe a little over 45, close to 45,000 maybe. And I think maybe second to California in party strength. I don't know how many Greens are registered in New York. And is it a true registration by party state? Can somebody answer that question for me?
Not anymore.
Well,
Or rather, people have the option of registering with a party. The Green Party no longer appears as an option, but you can still write it
in.
But you have to check the box that says other and the right green in, which if you don't know about the Green Party, it's not an option.
Yeah. Okay. So, what's interesting in Maine is we have these 45,000 Greens registered, and occasionally people will run for local office and win. And, I point to 2024, we had, 28 people run for local office, municipal offices, and 21 of them won. That's a 75% win rate.
Yeah.
Office. And those are only the races we know about. When I was with the electoral committee, there were a lot of Greens that were serving in local municipal office, and we didn't even know about them because people register to be a Green, but they don't necessarily interact with the party, and they end up running for school board, and there's an elected Green, and it takes research to find out all those Greens. And that would be interesting, maybe something that you could do to take a look at that and, try to reach out to then some of those local, municipal serving Greens in New York, right? Do you know all of the Greens that are serving in local office there? Maybe a homework assignment. It's not an insignificant amount of work though. But so I'm going to take it now, and I have a lot of strategies about what we should have done in Maine and what people, push back on me for trying to do too much. They said I tried to run too many candidates. I like the idea of a two-tiered strategy where you have a up-ticket candidate and a lot of lower-ticket candidates, and try to make it right for, what you're working with. So in Maine, my strategy that I tried to pitch to the Maine Greens that I was, eventually rejected, again, trying to do too much. I said reasonably, let's try to run at least two candidates in every county for either a municipal or a state legislative office. Now, we have 16 counties in Maine. That would have been 32 races, which I think we could have done out of the 45,000 Greens that are in Maine. And then we'd have maybe 2 congressional races and a Senate race, perhaps, or gubernatorial race. But I encourage you to think about, what is the right size thing? I guess the state rep office is actually pretty large there in New York, right? You're talking hundreds of thousands of people, maybe, right? Is somebody, yes or no?
What's the
Anybody?
question?
In a state or a state legislative race in New York, in one of your, one of your districts, isn't it like 100,000 people or more for a state rep?
What kind of, for somebody
Like
going to the state
assemblyman or
assembly?
senate,
Yeah, state assembly.
For how many votes to win the election?
Yeah,
That's close.
about 100,000.
About 100.
That's a lot of doors to knock on. But what I'm encouraging you to think about is what is the right kind of breakup of okay, here's municipal candidates. Let's say have a dozen municipal candidates, and we got somebody running for a state assembly seat. They're all in that district. And, again, where you have this kind of strategic kind of campaigning, both with the up-ticket candidate, campaigning for the down-ticket candidates for municipal races, et cetera. And, what we saw when the feedback we got from congressional candidates in 2024, over and over again, we had exit interviews with our GCC and C endorsed candidates. And they said, hey, you know what? It was great because when I was out there campaigning, I helped build these locals. We invigorated local activity there, and heard that from a number of candidates. So if that's something we can do by running these up-ticket candidates, and I think it does happen, and you can, again, the down-ticket candidates campaigning on their own, right? Because again, it's hard to knock on 100,000 doors, but if you had, say, 12 to 20 candidates for municipal elections in that district, then they're campaigning in their own areas, and that's going to help the up-ticket candidate, right? If they campaign synergistically. Okay, so having said, talking about elections a little bit, and again, I think running in elections can help stimulate party growth. Let's talk about another strategy that I've specifically been thinking about for New York. And feel free to give me feedback and say, that probably won't work for us, Justin. But I'm familiar with some people that live in New York that are really crazy about ballot initiatives. And and I can't remember exactly the ballot initiative process in New York, but this person is an expert on it. And this one particular person, his name is Roger Meadows, also a friend of Sabby Sabs, who I mentioned earlier. And I'm sure he would love to partner with doing ballot initiatives. And my thought is if we can help participate in ballot initiatives, right, we could also possibly tie that in with a candidate campaign where, again, we're synergistically working with a ballot measure, and we're running on that issue. And it's a two-pronged attack. And we're saying, hey, if you won't give it to us, we're going to get elected so we can have a voice to say that, in office and fight for this issue. So I think that, like, if you could get involved in some ballot initiatives, that is, again, a lot of people willing to possibly organize around an issue. And perhaps that's people that you could bring into the party. If we want to grow our numbers, we need to bring people in that are sharing some of our values and, starting that conversation. So this is a great kind of outreach if you're, say, working on a ballot initiative. I worked on ranked choice voting here in Maine, right, which we eventually won, right? That was a hard fought battle and worth another story, and also how we use it and everything. So just a thought, is maybe like there's things like with ballot initiatives that you could do in New York. And again, I know some people, like a particular person that is very interested in ballot initiatives, and he could tell you exactly how the ballot initiative process works there in New York. And I think it's difficult for you guys right now. He's actually very interested in seeing some Greens win some state assembly seats to help change processes around ballot initiatives. And he terms it as direct democracy, which, we are absolutely for as well, right? So, so I think, those are a couple of things I just wanted to kind of toss out there in regards to party building and building our movement, growing our numbers. And, again, the couple of things I would say, right, is trying to run candidates, but also run them related to issues and possibly tying them in with a ballot initiative or something along those lines, or fighting for a particular issue, like Rick was saying, for like better public transportation. And, if there's a movement that, you are involved with, or you're, can we bring people in that are involved with certain types of activist protesting that are willing to step and say, hey, I would try a run for Congress. And going back to the ballot initiative thing, let's say you're working on a ballot initiative and you need to collect tens of thousands of signatures to get on the ballot, right? To get the ballot initiative on the ballot. Well, if you're working with this group and you're with the Green Party and you're representing the Green Party in a positive way and saying, hey, by the way, we've got this candidate that's going to run for office. And hey, while we're getting these signatures, why don't you help us get these signatures too? And I also encourage building your base of people willing to collect signatures to help keep them as people, try to do the research in them or get them so you have a pool of people that you can go to for signatures. So it's not as hard of a lift. And, I encourage trying to have events together where it's like, hey, you're on our list you've signed signatures before and you support the work we're doing. You're invested in the movement with us. Come to this big meeting. Let's all sign a bunch of signatures and get it over as quickly as possible. And that could possibly kick off a campaign where you're signing up more people to volunteer to help collect signatures. And every signature that you're getting for a ballot initiative or for a candidate to get them on the ballot, that is a chance to also campaign. And it takes 3 points of contact with a voter to get them to vote for you, really. Knocking on doors is great. It's important. It's a good way to do it. But those that are forced to collect signatures, that is your first point of contact with a voter. And the second is maybe a postcard and then a follow-up get out the vote postcard, right? So, the initial face-to-face or, with a signature or just, at the door handing out literature, the postcard saying, that was great, nice to meet you, hopefully you'll vote for us in the fall, and then the get out the vote postcard. 3 points of contact gets you a vote. I've seen that work for state legislative races, for municipal races here in Maine, with Anna Tabarro when we won her race in 2021. Okay, I've said a lot. I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts on any of that. Curious what you guys think about the ballot initiative thing. But Rick, anything else? Do we need to say anything else, or do you guys have any thoughts or questions? I'll turn it over to Cassandra. Or to Jim, are you running this?
Nobody's running it.
No,
Who's running the ship?
no, no, I know, I'm not an expert on ballot initiatives in New York State, but I think they have to go through the legislature to appear on the ballot. In other words, it's not direct at this point. I guess it would be similar to get to get a movement going to get something on the ballot. But then to make sure that it appears on the New York State ballot, it needs the legislature to sign off on it with the language and all that. That's all I particularly know about it. I know with ranked choice voting, that kind of thing goes. There've been numerous bills in the legislature for that, but I know New York City got it, but only for primaries, and maybe, I don't know, is it special elections, Gloria? I'm not sure, but
Yes, sorry, yeah. Primaries and I think special election if they don't reach the
right.
50% plus one, right?
Yeah. So, and we actually had people, I guess at hearings, Green Party people trying to get it done for all elections, in New York City, but it didn't work because, again, I don't think the Democrats, Republicans wanted that. It's okay for their primaries. Very strange. So I was wondering how. I have just two questions on what's been presented so far. Is how is, let's say, ranked choice voting affected elections in Maine? And then also, I'm curious as to what happened to the Green Party in New Mexico. In that Rick said at some point it collapsed, I think was the term he used. But so I have those questions. But we've tried to change ballot status in New York, but again, we've tried to go through. The legislature, we don't really get anywhere, and that's sort of very negative for our party right now, I guess. So and we're hoping maybe some of us are hoping that maybe this guy, even though he's a Democrat, Mandani, can maybe so I should sit down and talk with him and push ranked choice voting further than it's been in the past. I think that would help us out. In New York.
That'll be interesting to see the mayoral race without the ranked choice voting, right? And see how that plays out. And perhaps he would be friendly to listening to that too, expanding ranked choice voting. Rick, do you want to talk about New Mexico, or do you want me to start off with the response about the ranked choice voting in Maine?
Go ahead, and I'll talk about ranked choice voting in New Mexico after you.
Okay. So ranked choice voting in Maine, it's interesting, right? We actually, we don't have full ranked choice voting in Maine. We have ranked choice voting for federal level offices. So for House, U.S. House, U.S. Senate, presidential as well. That was ensured later on, but does not apply to state level races. So governor, state rep, and state senate. It is active in many municipal races. In Portland uses ranked choice voting for elections, general elections. But there's a clause in the Maine State Constitution that says the winner is by plurality, right? And so we would need to change the Constitution for it to apply to all state level races. So that is the reason why, it only applies to those certain races. Now, in Maine, it's also very difficult. So those that followed Lisa Savage's campaign in 2020, which I was very proud to be a part of, to help initiate that, run for candidate for Congress, for Senate in 2020, she actually had to get on the ballot as an independent rather than as green, because we also have, unfortunately, right, we have this great opportunity with ranked choice voting, but it's extremely hard to get on the ballot as a green here in Maine because we can only get signatures from registered Green Party members. And we didn't have address and contact information for all of our 45,000 registered Greens. And like trying to find them in Portland, it's like, oh, this person's moved, or we had an old list of data. And it was just a logistical nightmare to even get 2,000 registered Greens to sign to get somebody on the ballot for Senate. So ranked choice voting is complicated in Maine still. I wish we, the people that are doing the Maine Greens now, right? I wish they would focus on how to run candidates as independents and then claim them as green afterwards, right? That's what we did with Lisa. She said she was really a green, but she had run on the ballot as an independent. So it's complicated in Maine with ranked choice voting, but it's a great thing for the races. It allowed Lisa to appear in debates, I think, because they're less afraid of the spoiler effect. Which we all know is a myth anyways, but we'll let them have their ranked choice voting if it makes them feel better. And a great way to get ranked choice voting is to run candidates to push them to give you ranked choice voting, right? Yes, we're making it hard for you to win, so give us ranked choice voting. My opinion. I yield to Rick.
Yeah, so in New Mexico during that heyday, we did get ranked choice voting through the Senate. We introduced it 6 years in a row, and the only time we got it, to Justin's point, was when the sponsor was the Democrat who we had spoiled his election, and he came back and said, we need ranked choice voting, and we got it through the Senate. But, so if that's not the best example for why we need to be spoiling elections, I don't know what is. But it didn't pass the House, and then we did get it in Santa Fe in 2008, and it took them 8 years to actually do it because the Democrat, a very prominent Democrat on the city council, inserted a poison pill at the last minute, saying when the technology is available or something like that. But then about 6 years ago, maybe 8 now, they gave enabling language for the municipalities. So any municipality can adopt it. And Santa Fe and Las Cruces now use it. Las Cruces is the second largest. And we failed in Albuquerque by a 5-4 vote of the city council twice. And there's elections this fall, and we're hoping we'll have another chance at it with the new council. So we kind of have ranked choice voting here. And people seem to like it, which is good. And as far as the Green Party in New Mexico, I don't really know what to say. People sort of lost interest. The Democrats very successfully blamed us for all the evils that all Republicans in the entire world do. And people just sort of bought into it, and people stopped organizing with the Green Party. Our people that were elected retired. A lot of the people that were very active in the late 90s have moved out of state or had kids and had different priorities in their lives. So we've only, I ran in 2008. We had one person run for city council in Santa Fe in 2016, I think. And we've had one person run for state legislature in Albuquerque. So in the last almost 20 years, we've had 3 candidates. Our presidential candidates always get on because we have one of the easier thresholds to keep ballot access. We only need a 0.5%. So we will have ballot access as long as we keep running presidential candidates. But we had a state, we call it the Green Council out here, our quarterly Green Council meeting 2 weeks ago, and 7 people showed up. I mean, it's as many people in your one local area as we have in our whole state.
Wow.
And I wish I could point to like this one thing happened, but I really think it's the Democratic Party's control of the media narrative and our inability to fight back. And to be honest, the Democratic Party has gotten a lot more progressive, and I think for a lot of people, that's good enough.
Not here.
You know, I would say, both of my U.S. senators who are Democrats voted against funding weapons to Israel twice at the Congress. That's pretty impressive. And one of them, when he was on the Public Regulation Commission, pushed through the legislature what at the time were the highest, they call it renewable energy portfolio, the highest requirement for percentage of renewable energy going into our grid we had for a while. It was 20% by 2020, and we reached that goal, and now it's 30% by 2030. So, I mean, so I don't want to, I don't think that's good enough, but for the general public, they took us seriously as a threat, and they changed. Just like what happened with the Progressive Party back in the 20s and 30s when they, Roosevelt adopted so many other platforms for the New Deal that sort of shut them up. So that's a longer conversation, but that's my perspective on what happened to the New Mexico Green Party.
Are there any other questions? Oh, I see Gloria has a hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Rick and Justin. I always like to hear from what you've done in your states. I think that there are definitely some parallels or things we can learn or try that you brought up, both of you. Rick and I had a conversation about what he'd done in New Mexico over those period of years. I mean, our districts are big. They're 120,000, 130,000. That's assembly district. City council could be even more. So what's interesting is in New York City, the signature requirements were cut in half for the citywide races and for city council, nearly in half. I don't know if that happened during COVID, but it stayed that way. Although if you look at the State Board of Elections website, it still has the same old signatures. So it's like, I can't imagine, we have some of the most insane Board of Elections, Nassau being one of them. But, so it's doable. It's a little bit more doable to collect signatures than it used to be as an independent party. But then again, the districts are so big in terms of campaigning. I think that in New York State over the years, even before we lost ballot status, I think we were definitely shrinking in the number of people who'd run for office. I think I don't know if it was Justin or Rick that said, if you're going to do this tiered approach, it's like, and we've talked about this a little bit, but I don't think we have anybody really looking at the strategy, which is sorry, kids are screaming outside. Like everybody should be in the same district area, right? So is your congressional district overlapping with your assembly district, overlapping with your city council district? Those elections are different times. City elections are on the odd years. But it's still campaigning, and then you're campaigning for the next year's election. You're seeing those people for city council. I think we have to do a better job of that strategy and having people take a look at it. That's what I think the National Party should do too. It's just, I don't think
Absolutely.
you discourage people from running for office. Years ago on our campaign committee, when I was doing that, I would say, it was similar. We kind of said a two-tier thing. So we're going to pick a candidate, maybe two, that we're really going to focus on, give all the money to, give all the attention, give all the effort, get the volunteers there, and everybody else can run. But you're kind of running more like, with your friends and neighbors in your district. We'll put you on our website. But that resources should go for where you think you can win. And I think where we can likely win in New York is outside of New York City, even though the density and the progressiveness, I think, tends to be here. So I can't really wrap my head around like the best approach for that. Sorry, that's a bit long-winded, but you're both making me think a lot about how we should be approaching 2026. And I think we would like to do a targeted campaign, candidate recruitment. So we'd be happy to work with you on that. pass for now.
I think Leonard Lehrman has his hand up.
Yes, can you hear me?
Go ahead.
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, I want to bring up a point that's been one that has been discussed nationally and perennially, that was touched on when you said that the Progressive Party failed because it was kind of subsumed by the Progressive Democrats in the 30s and 40s. My parents very proudly voted for Roosevelt on the American Labor Party ticket, and then they also campaigned for Henry Wallace on the Progressive Party. But the point is that they very rarely voted for Democrats. They voted for the Liberals. They voted for Working Families Party. They would vote for Green parties if they were alive today. But my point is one word: coalition. I think it's very important that we combine our efforts with like-minded people in other parties. Now, Alan and Elizabeth and I marched in the No Kings rally. We had some opposition to that because it was perceived as a Democratic Party event. It was not a Democratic Party event, and the leadership welcomed us as Green Party members into that event. And we should be doing similar events similar to that. The Green parties in Europe and in Australia and elsewhere form coalitions. They endorse candidates that are not necessarily members of the Green Party. This is not something that the Green Party in the United States does. A minority of us, a very vocal minority of us, believe that should change. And I would be interested to get a reaction to that idea from our friends in New Mexico and Maine. So I yield to them.
Yeah, I agree. We need to work in coalition. And, Jill worked really hard to try to get the Claudia and her running mate on board to talk, do things together, and it didn't fall through. Green Party leadership went out to the Worker Strike Back conference, and it was not as successful as it could have been. I'm even willing to work with progressive Democrats when they're doing the right thing, which does happen. And you heard just a minute ago, I was happy to say my two Democratic senators did the right thing on that one vote. So I think there's definitely a time for coalition. I don't know how much time we want to go into it, but in Europe, it's a much different system. They kind of have to go into coalition because they don't have winner take all elections. They have proportional representation, which I think is a good thing. But to compare us working with the Democrats, I mean, fusion is very rare. I don't know if you still have it in New York. I think you used to be one of the states, and the Working Family Party, they tried to form down here. I asked them, so if I wanted to help your organization, should I join the Working Family Parties or should I stay a Democrat so I can vote in the primary for the Democrat you endorse? And they couldn't even answer the question. So they're kind of not really there politically savvy yet. But no, I mean, if all the socialist parties formed one party, they'd be huge, but there's like 9 of them. They can't even get along amongst themselves. So, my general answer is yes, it's a great idea to work in coalition, but when you come down to it, it gets very, very difficult. Justin?
Yeah, I agree with coalition, working in coalition. And, going to take a slightly maybe different tack on this. And again, I mentioned like trying to do like ballot initiatives. Granted, it sounds like, again, the state legislature is going to, is very capable of blocking that, though, ballot initiatives. I really, again, this person, Roger Meadows, who's very savvy on ballot initiatives, I would love it if he would, have a chance to talk with you guys about developing some strategy around ballot initiatives. But, when you talk about coalition building too, Gloria, I think you make a really good point about, and again, I encourage you to look at where you have opportunities, and it might be outside of New York. It could be upstate New York, and I understand your districts are big. Your state assembly districts are big, 100,000 votes. In Maine, a state representative race, a state assembly essentially is, I think, maybe 8,000 people total. in that district, right? So that you could knock on that many doors, but how do you knock on 100,000 doors? So in regards to coalition, though, I think we need to look at the things that really resonate with the people of a certain area. And, really the issue with Palestine is such an important issue. If you look at the youth today that are organizing in New York, right, around Columbia, or, there's just so much interest in, challenging, like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is on the ropes right now because she just voted for that additional spending to Israel.
Exactly.
We may not be able to get on the ballot as a Green in New York, right? And I don't know what difference it would be, like, if you have a Green candidate for Congress, like how many signatures do you need? And, is it easier possibly for them to get on the ballot as an independent, like it is here in Maine, right? I don't know exactly what your conditions are, but again, if you do run somebody in say New York City somewhere for a congressional seat, again, maybe it's to challenge Richie Torres or even AOC herself. I think there's a lot of people that would be very interested in that, and that could possibly bring a lot of people into that area to organize. And then can we find some down ticket candidates in that area? Gail, I see you have a hand up to.
Yeah, I guess I have a different definition of coalition. I think we need to build our party.
May I have your attention, please? Library.
Oh, wow.
Sorry.
If you borrow materials, please come to the check-in desk now. Computers will be turned off.
There'll be more of these too.
Yeah,
We can go to a few minutes before 9. Yeah.
Well, I don't mind, because we've been on many demonstrations for issues that we believe in and causes. But I find there's a real schism in ideology between Democrats, at least in New York, and the Green Party. So I find it hard when you say build a coalition. I don't mind demonstrating again, for issues, but I think the Green Party, but I believe so strongly in the Green Party's platform, and it doesn't overlink with the Democratic, at least the higher ups who vote for Israel to, exterminate all the Palestinians, or they vote for all the wars. So I find that I want to build the party because we have different platforms. But again, when there's an issue, like we go with Food and Water Watch, all our energy, will demonstrate on the issue.
And Alan, I see your hand up there. Can I just one thing back to Gail? We're not talking about building a coalition with Democrats. I think it's more like we want to again, I think people would love us to challenge AOC right now. There's a lot of people on the left that would love to see that. A lot of Democrats won't like to see that, but people that really are tired of people capitulating to this warmongering system we have. They would love to see an anti-war candidate step up against AOC. Alan, I'm sorry, go ahead.
One of the ideas we had bandied about is since we're no longer a ballot status party and it takes so many more signatures to get a candidate on the ballot, is to round up people that are capable of going door to door and getting signatures and descend like locusts on the districts that seem to have the most viable candidates. There was briefly some talk about doing so on behalf of one candidate, but then there was sort of a lack of consensus about whether the candidate was the right person for the position and so on, and it sort of ended up not going anywhere. But I still think that's probably a viable strategy.
Justin Stack?
Go ahead.
You bring up something really good here, Alan, too. You know, and again, I kind of mentioned it, like, is it easier for us to get on the ballot as an independent there in New York? Is there anybody from PSL or some kind of organization that is very close to our values that we would say, hey, you know, I know like Jose Vega. Those are you familiar with Jose Vega, who's run for Congress against Richie Torres?
Yes.
Um, yes, exactly. And granted, that's part of the LaRouche movement, right? Which is
Yes. Yes.
um,
Who's the LaRouche?
the LaRouche, yes, which is its own other can of worms that we could talk about maybe at length another time. But you know, as somebody from PSL that maybe is not quite like the LaRouches, right?
What's PSL? What does it stand for?
Party for Socialism and Liberation. They had a presidential candidate, Claudia de la Cruz,
Oh,
in 2024 that actually
She was
had a
good.
lot of overlap with Jill. I thought it was very good collaboration there. But so you talk about a coalition campaign. If PSL had somebody that was really like, this would be an excellent candidate for Congress, could we get behind that person, help them succeed, and form a coalition with that group? Perhaps that could lead to something else, forming a stronger party in the future, a coalition party. I yield to, I see hands, Rick and Gloria.
So I had,
Gloria?
I wanted to say,
Oh.
along that line, in California, 2 election cycles ago, the Green Party and the PSL it wasn't exactly a coalition, but they did talk about not running in the same state legislative district with that socialist party that's associated with the PSL. It's got a different name in California, I think. But anyway, so that's not exactly what you're talking about, but to me, the idea of the coalition is a little different. It's not really what you meant probably, but what if the Greens won 5 congressional seats this time and it was split between the Democrats and Republicans? Then the Democrats would have to come to the Greens if they wanted to pass legislation, and we would be not their coalition partner, but their sort of conscience, whatever we'd be. So that's sort of a vision. I know it's a long shot to even elect one in the current system, but just imagine having 5 Greens being the swing vote in Congress. It would change everything. And you alluded to the European system, and that's about the only way we're going to get there, I think, in the United States. Gloria?
Yeah, that would be wonderful, Rick. So wait, just to clarify before I ask my question, when you're talking about coalition, you're not talking about coalition with other parties. You were talking about it in a different way? Or you were? Like everybody's kind of given their definition of coalition.
Yeah, no, Leonard brought up the idea. In that
Right.
instance, neither one is a true coalition. What's happening in California is more of an agreement, and
Right.
the
Which makes
congressional
sense.
thing.
I mean, we had such limited capacity to run candidates. If we had relationships with independent parties and organizations, I wouldn't see the point in challenging, to a PSL candidate and a Green candidate in the same district. I mean, my feeling about PSL, which is probably the only party, not really a party, but the only one that really runs candidates occasionally, our Bronx Greens did help out when they had a mayoral candidate last time around. They decided to endorse and support. But one of the things that they asked, and maybe this wasn't, maybe it was over the top for PSL, is that they'd like to be part of the campaign meetings. They'd like to, offer some program or suggestions or things like that, right, to participate. And they were like, no, thanks for petitioning. PSL.
Yeah.
PSL is a difficult example. They're a democratic centrist organization. Jill and I had a number of meetings with them where there was a lot of friendliness. It didn't quite work out. But it was, what I think about it was practice, right? We practice doing those kinds of things, putting yourself on a limb a little bit. Okay, it doesn't work. How much do you give? How much do you don't? How much you say that's not going to work here, but the DSA and the Working Families Party are really obstacles at this point. Although I do hear that outside of New York City and even outside of New York State, DSA is more amenable to working with Greens. There's kind of a cutthroat feeling of competition in New York City, but it's different than it's opposite in like from Maine. Like it's easier to get on the ballot if you have a ballot line, but if you do it as an independent, as you saw when you were here, Justin, it's after the other petitioning period and it's many, many more signatures. But we can run an independent campaign, and I think that we should run some in 2026. I think the signature requirement is reasonable. It's not 45,000. We did 42,000, although that was with a lot of money. But I think that without running candidates, we continue to kind of become less relevant. I think people do like to rally around a candidate. And just one more point when you're talking about what you run on.
Yeah.
I think the challenge for the Green Party, and that's not just here really, but nationally, is that we have a huge platform. And people will say, well, of course, you're going to love our platform. So you're like, our candidate, it's too unwieldy. Like a candidate needs a program that addresses the issues that are, let's say, short term and if not long term, then medium term to get done in your city or your state or your local.
And specific, not abstract.
Correct. Like free and fast buses, freeze the rent. I mean, Mondani, no matter what question you ask him, he will, like, if you say, like, what did you have for breakfast? He will tell you, and then he will go into those 3 points. He never deviates, no matter what things they say about it.
Well, that goes back to what I was talking about with the 11 demands idea. And, I think working on a slate of candidates nationwide for Congress that have a bullet point list of demands, like these are the things we are going to work on in Congress. What you can count on for us to vote, along the lines of, and again, I think, there's huge opportunity, I think, in some places in New York where there's such a strong desire to unseat Democrats that have caved into supporting this genocide that you will find volunteers. If you have the right kind of person willing to step in and run for Congress, you will find the volunteers fairly easily, I think, to get those signatures. And again, what can we do to find the down ticket candidates and really have a large movement there at the same time? And can we make that happen, for 2026? Or it's okay if we, maybe strategize for the next, congressional cycle. But I'm glad we're talking about it and thinking about it. Over.
Maynard, I see your hand is up.
May I say something? I brought up the word coalition, and obviously it got reactions from everybody having their own idea of what coalition means. I just want to bring up one urgent meaning. We're living in a time of incipient fascism. There's no question about it. And the lack of coalition in Germany, where the communists called the Social Democrats social fascists and refused to align against Hitler, was what brought Hitler to power and gave him the opportunity to do what he did. We have to stop what's going on in Washington, and we've got to do it together. And that's really more than anything else what I meant by coalition. Over.
I think that goes along the lines of, what Rick was saying as well with coalition. Again, if we have 5 people in Congress, that are willing to hold the line, we can work in coalition with, those people that are like willing to stand strong against, if they need our votes for something, it's like, we're only giving you our votes if you do X, Y, and Z. But, I think that is a kind of coalition forming thing. And I don't know. I see your point, Leonard. I see your point.
Thank you.
But
Jim Brownstein. Yeah. I just want to say, for example, on Long Island, the Congress people, and I'm going to go with the ones that I know, Laura Gillen and Tom Swazi in Nassau, and I think Tom Swazi has some of Queens. They're very supportive of Israel. Okay, they're not really fighting for immigrants. They're very conservative Democrats, trying to be more, in my opinion, more. They're trying to get more Republican votes. Okay. Now, I'm sure there are people in Nassau who would be willing, who would like to see, different representatives there. But then again, we come up with the whole lesser of two evils, and it's a really tough situation for us to operate in. New York City, I think, someone going after AOC would be good, but here sometimes it just seems so futile, almost because the society and the fear or whatever is so conservative. Like, I don't know, like what Leonard was saying, there's so many progressive Democrats out here so afraid of Trump and Trumpers, and there are a lot of Trumpers out here. You got to look around.
Yes.
But
Not
you don't.
in this room.
But you can't. There's no way that I would ally myself with someone like Laura Gillen or Tom Swazi. Years ago, when we cross-endorsed in Nassau County in New York, we endorsed Swazi. He was our candidate for, I think it was town. I think it was supervisor at the time. And when he got, we were the first ones to nominate him to get him started. County executive. And what happened was, when he got elected, he didn't even mention the Green Party. After a while, we abandoned, because we have Fusion, we abandoned cross-endorsing Democrats. And here we're in a very, we're not like New York City or Brooklyn or Manhattan. It's become very right-wing out here. It's very, there are progressive people, but a lot of really right-wing people. It's a tough situation to exist in, really.
Alan?
Over.
Yeah.
I would like to see us take initiative and organize a rally, a march, or some kind of event, so that when we're talking about coalition, we're not just talking about us hitching ourselves to whatever the Democratic Party activists have put together, or deciding not to, but instead take some initiative and so that people associate our name, our branding, with an actual action or two. Out in California, they're doing things like coming in with tow trucks and towing away ICE vehicles as soon as they step out of the vehicles. They're surrounding buildings and getting themselves arrested, and they make the news. And we just haven't been stepping up and doing anything here.
A large number of people are calling on political parties to do a lot of things, a lot more with mutual aid as well, and I think that's a place where we can do more, besides like, hey, let's organize a rally, an anti-war, anti-genocide rally. Often we are participating, we don't have the numbers to really organize those kind of large events. If we had some people that could participate with organizing those large events and get them familiar with us as organizers, that would help. That kind of coalition building. But mutual aid, I think, is something that's overlooked there too, and could bring people on board with the Green Party. And to Jim's point about the Democrats really acting conservatively, and it's like that fear of the lesser evil. Here's my point to that, Jim. If you have a conservative Democrat and a Republican that are both going to vote to increase spending or continue this gross spending for Israel, and you come out with a candidate that is against that spending and denounces it and strongly opposes it, and a lot of the other things that these two agree on, well, let them split the vote amongst themselves, and we will take the rest of that vote. That is the mindset we need to have. Let them split that vote, and that makes it easier for us to win, right? And that's the argument we make.
Justin, there's only one
But
real
excuse
danger
me,
with that.
Joey's next.
Joey's next.
Yeah,
He's off camera. so
I'm
he
off
gets-
camera.
I yield.
He's raising his hand.
Thanks. Yeah, I just wanted to build up how I perceive the county and speaking is from when I would attend DSA meetings, their priority was basically trying to work on getting all of the cannabis opt-out municipalities to opt in. So I'm just gonna sum it up that since I think the 80s, everywhere in Nassau County has just become more and more yuppie-ish. You familiar with so it's hard to find people who are out that wear keffiyehs or are supporting anti-genocide. But I think also looking maybe at the finances of, well, if you're not sending $500 million, this season to Israel, you could use that money for, Medicare for all or the environment or housing for all. So that'd be a helpful point to try and bring some messaging, but it's hard. It's really hard.
We have to end.
Yeah, we have to end.
It's almost 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
Do Rick or Justin have just a brief closing statement they want to make to us? And thank you so much for
Yeah, thank you.
zooming in with us.
This is great.
Be great. But the library closes down.
At 9.
Rick, go ahead.
Yeah.
I don't really have anything else. I think this was a great conversation, and I'm really glad we were here. And I thank you for inviting us and for having
Well,
us.
thank you.
Thank
So
you.
let's definitely keep in touch. Let us know when you find your next congressional candidates.
You bet. You bet.
And I hope I'd like to echo those words and say that I hope the conversation sparked some maybe new ways of thinking, or maybe brought you back to a thought you had before that you never really followed up on. And I know that we all have challenges in our state in our own ways. Try to think about how to take apart those challenges and turn those into opportunities. And love to contact you with that gentleman I was speaking about with ballot initiatives, Roger Meadows. I know he'd be very interested in talking with you more. He's not, he believes in party abolition. He doesn't believe in political parties. He believes in direct democracy again, but so he's very into ballot initiatives, less so about the parties, but
Right.
he could be an ally.
We can't have ballot initiatives here. We can't do ballot initiatives in New York City. I don't know about outside of New York.
Yeah.
Well, we've got to get going, but thank you very much. You
Thank
gave us
you.
some very good ideas, both of you, and we had a
Yes.
good discussion among all of us here.